Okay, seems to us leveled off, so we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. My name is Matt Walensky. I'm the Director of Admission here at St. Andrews. It's my great pleasure and privilege to welcome you to our parent roundtable tonight with some of my very favorite St. Andrews parents over the years. I'm going to try to be a real light touch as a moderator and have this just be a conversation between parents, but just to start off and say, as someone pointed out as we were preparing, sending your kids to boarding school is such a big step, and we understand that. And so much of it is just really understanding and feeling and trusting that the school and the faculty and the community you're trusting your kids to really shares your values and really is on board and a good partner with you as parents. And I just have to say to this group of parents who are with us on the Zoom tonight, it's been such an honor working with your kids over the years. Each little story, going back to meeting your students for the first time, I always think of little Griffin Pitt in the Trinity gym back in 6th or 7th grade, and all of these students and families come through as a family experience. So we're here to talk about that tonight. We're here to introduce you to these great parent voices who are going to have some wisdom and experience to share with you, and also some advice on how to navigate both the transition to boarding school if you've already decided on St. Andrews, and also some really compelling reasons why St. Andrews was the choice for their families. So we're going to talk about all that tonight. We're going to try and respect your time, of course, but we just really want to be a good resource for you. So in a moment, we'll do introductions. Just a last plug to please, if you do have questions as we're going through, drop your questions into the chat. We're happy to take some of those as they come, or we might save it for the Q&A towards the back half of the program. So with that, I'm going to try and step back a little bit and just let this be a great conversation. So figured we could do introductions first. Let's start geographically north. I guess, Stacy, that would be you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stacy Williams Seeley. I live in New York City, recently transplanted from Exton, Pennsylvania, and before that, transplanted from New York City, where my husband and I work in independent schools in some degree, form, or fashion. I actually live at a boarding school in New York. My my child came to St. Andrews from Exton, Pennsylvania, right outside of Philadelphia, and he is currently a senior. His name is Crawford. He likes to play soccer. He's interested in science and religious studies for college and engineering, possibly. He's still making up his mind. And he likes soccer and track, indoor track, and lacrosse are the sports that he's played at St. Andrews. It's really hard to, when I think about a great moment for him, I also think about my older child who graduated in 2017. We've been a member of the school community since 2013, I guess, and first visited in 2012. And our children had grown up at a different boarding school. And so making a decision to send them to St. Andrews was really intentional. And it's so hard to crystallize things into one moment. But I certainly remember my son receiving a handwritten note from the head of school when he got in to St. Andrews, and that the head of school remembered my son as an 8 or 9-year-old who liked to do, rebound on the basketball court or stand on the sidelines of his sister's soccer game or in the bleachers at the basketball game is just really a reminder of how well known both of my children have felt in their time at St. Andrews by their advisors, by their teachers, by their dorm parents, by their college advisors, by their coaches, and by their head of school. And that has really resonated for us as school leaders and school people. We really did our research and we did our homework, and I think we were right. We made the right decisions for our kids. So welcome and I'll turn it over to whoever is geographically next, or Matt will tell us.
Yeah, I guess that would probably be Marvin and Robin.
Good evening. This is Marvin and Robin Dillard. Our daughter is Marie. She's a 10th grader. And, you know, as we think back on her journey, it was really Marie that made the decision. We were the ones that were dragging, right? But it was her that made the decision. She met Ms. Dupre at the fair at her school, and she says, "That's where I'm going." And we were like, "Whoa, hold on. Boarding school? Well, wait a minute." So we must have been, you know, long story short, we probably went to 9 schools, and every school was compared to St. Andrews. And it was always, when I go to St. Andrews. And we were like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen here? So, you know, but then on the way down, because we were delayed obviously for COVID, so we didn't know how she was going to, you know, participate, if you will, on the trip in. And then later we see that on Instagram, she had posted on her way down a picture of the landscape of the skyscape of New York City. As we leave, we're here in Inglewood, just outside of New York City. And she says, "Bye, New York. Hello, Marie's paradise." So that's, and then, you know, we get these pictures back with her beside the lake, drawing, as she's a terrific artist. But then just the other day, because we never know what she's doing next, and she just texts me that says, "Wow, Dad, I nailed my speech." I was like, "What speech?" So it's as they come into this world, it's amazing how welcoming the environment is. And Marie was elated to be there.
Ditto.
Thank you. Maybe out to the West Coast, Amy.
Hello, everybody. So I am the mother of a senior boy named William, and I'd just like to reiterate some of what has already been said, particularly Stacy's comments. I can't emphasize enough how important it has been for the development of William to be known and cared about by the community in which he lives. And we also had the same experience where the head of school wrote us a personal note, which was, you know, unusual at that time, to get that kind of care and attention from a head of a school. But that gesture is really a metaphor for the place. High school, secondary school is different than college. I mean, the educational experience at St. Andrews is excellent. The extracurricular program is excellent, but children need to be known and loved and brought along in life. And they're still children in secondary school, so it's different than college that way. And I just can't overemphasize how important that has been for my son William's development, and really the joy that has gone along with his experience at the school, in addition to, you know, what we think of as education and opportunity. So
yeah, thank you, Amy. And those of you who were at Visit Back Day on Tuesday will remember William on the senior panel. He was the young man all the way to the right. So Amy, thanks for the warmth and generosity he's already shared with some folks on this call. So and then last but not least, of course, Amy Pitt, Charlotte, North Carolina.
Thank you. Yes, we're from Charlotte, the Tar Heel State. I'll just sort of work that in for this week. The Tar Heel State. We have 2 daughters, Griffin and Josie. Josie is an 11th grader at St. Andrews. Griffin just graduated last year, this past spring. Sports-wise, they have stuck to cross country in the fall, basketball in the winter, and then rowing crew in the spring. They've mostly done some of the same sports. The athletic opportunities have been tremendous because the school encourages everyone to do something every season, whether that's theater, the musical arts. They both also sing, or they both are involved in the musical arts. Josie sings in choir, Andrian's choir and Knoxon Tones, and Griffin played the cello in the orchestra. So there are just so many opportunities for them to be productive. And we'll get to it later, but one of the reasons that we knew St. Andrews was the right place was just the multitude of opportunities that they have to try new things and experiment and do things out of their comfort zone. I would say, you know, how did we know? We knew St. Andrews was the right school for our family long before our children, they had their epiphany, but we were blessed that they shared the same desire and ideas. And our girls went to a K-8 school that had a reputation for being a school that really focuses on trying to instill a strong moral compass, a strong sense of right and wrong and social justice and inclusivity and faith of all sorts. So St. Andrews was a perfect fit from our perspective. We were warned heading into 8th grade that after the school that they went to, K-8, there's no soft landing for high school. And all the parents were like, there's just no high school that can replace this great K-8 school that we got to attend in Charlotte. But we found that soft landing to absolutely be St. Andrews. We think it is the softest landing from the school. It's very consistent with the culture and sentiment and philosophy that they were raised with K-8. So we just saw it to be very consistent. I think for those of you who've had the chance to either spend time on websites or Zoom calls or in person at different schools, as soon as you start to meet the people, you get a feel for the personality. And for us, the culture at St. Andrews is the culture that we wanted to continue to try to instill in our children. Oh, and the last thing I'll say really quickly, a special moment. I'll try to keep it real on the spectrum. I'd say we've experienced all sorts of emotions with 2 teenage girls for 4 and 3 years at St. Andrews. And so when COVID hit, and over spring break of 2020, all the kids were off on spring break, and we got the message that, hey, don't come back yet. We're going to wait this thing out for a couple of weeks. We're going to do school remotely. Both girls were in my car, or we were in the car together, and they had 2 incredibly different reactions. I won't give away who said what, but one was like, yes, school from home, like in my pajamas. And the other one burst into tears. They were so devastated not to be going back. So I'm happy to share all different ranges of perspectives and emotions and experiences.
Thank you all. And thank you for that great introduction to your families and how St. Andrews has shared in the journey with your kids. So to our audience, like I said, I really want to make this driven by your questions, your thoughts. I've got a couple that were submitted in advance, but please do drop anything you'd like to talk about into the chat. We've got some great wisdom and experience here on the panel. You know, maybe just to throw one out while people are thinking and putting questions into the chat. You know, and Amy, you sort of touched on this just a moment ago, but a moment of growth or a moment of accomplishment, or maybe even a moment of failure that led to growth. As you think back over your kids' experiences, can you think about that signature moment where maybe you saw them take a leap forward, a big step forward, or a step back that led to a step forward? I'm just always interested in those anecdotes of growth.
There's 2 Amy's on the panel, so which Amy?
No, I was saying I'll throw that out to the group. I was
okay.
referring back to what Amy
Amy
just said. Yeah.
Well, there are a couple things. You know, one, you don't want to think about having health issues when your child is away. But it happens. And we had an episode that Marie needed to go to the emergency room. And it was amazing because we're 2 hours away, but Mr. Olana drove her. He stayed there with her until we got there. And she was elated, right? And it was just, that's part of the front lawn that you hear about, it's not really a slogan, it is a reality. It's you're coming into the St. Andrews family, not just for 4 years, but it's a lifetime commitment, right? And we feel that already, our second year in. And then, you know, we're looking at, wow, we're 2 years old. We only have 2 years left. Oh my goodness, what's gonna happen? So, I mean, that's one of those things that, you know, they're going to be away from you, but they're in good hands. The faculty, everyone, and, you know, we had our family there this weekend, and my brother was looking around. He says, wow, everybody is friendly here. They're opening the doors, everybody speaks. So again, it's a family community, and it's very welcoming.
I'd like to piggyback on something that Amy, North Carolina Amy, shared about, both Amy's actually, about being known and seen. And I think that goes to Marie's level of comfort with Mr. Olano was never one of her teachers. And here he was on duty to take her all the way to Wilmington and to stay with her in a really, you know, a situation that's new and different for her. But it was so reassuring to know that there were people who are not only loving and caring, but then they're professionals in this space. And that's the thing I wanted to point out was she's our only child. And so the whole idea of her going to boarding school was absurd. I mean, when Stacy Dupre came to her K-8 school and, you know, had that nice booklet with the 2,300 acres and she's flipping through and she's like, her eyes are getting big. And I'm like, it says Saint and it says boarding school. That's a no. Both are a no, like no. And you never say no because the reality is it's the fit. And so the kind of child that she was and the young woman that she is now, it is absolutely the best place for her. And to have so many adults and senior, you know, older students that just care for her in so many ways, it's something that we couldn't give her here as an only child, schlepping her to day school and in car line, you know, the whole thing. And it was like this whole experience gives her 5 hours more each day almost. And so it's rich on so many levels. And as an only child, so I'll speak up for those folks who only have one child, it's really important that the student, the young person gets to attach to other loving adults, because that was our worry, is that we want to make sure that she can get out there. And this experience was so wonderful and has been so wonderful because it's not college, it still is high school. And so we got our fingers in it a little bit, but we're able to pull back and watch this process happen. And we don't have to worry that when she gets to college, some of the stuff she's already covering in this environment. So that was my 2 cents.
Thank you. Great. We do have some questions coming in, and some of this we sort of touched on in our comments, but Amy Atkinson, this might be a good one for you. You know, I went to St. Andrews, but I grew up and lived in Middletown, Delaware. So the sacrifice my parents made and that sort of distance factor was a lot different than some families. And we do have a question here from someone on the West Coast. You know, what advice would you share being farther away, navigating that distance that you'll have between you and your child, you know, both geographically, but also just in terms of knowing what they're doing every night?
Yeah, well, it's obviously a big step sending a child across the country to any school. I mean, at any age. I mean, even for college. I may have been a little bit more comfortable with it. Our family may have been a little bit more comfortable with it than other families, in that I had gone to boarding school, and our older daughter went to boarding school, and so it was a little bit in our family that way, but it's a big step. And you know, what you really want is for your, you know, it gets back to, is your child embraced? Is your child going to be happy? And do you trust the place that you're going to send it? And I can say from my own, our own decision making in our family, I felt more comfortable once I got to know St. Andrews and the culture there, sending my child across the country than I would have to some of the independent schools here. And I know that sounds, funny, but it really is the culture of a place that and the way your child is brought along and embraced that is most important. And I just can say 100% that has been true for William at St. Andrews. Now it's far away, you've got to, there's plane tickets and, logistics involved, but, that is surmountable. But then also communication is so much much easier with children today. I mean, we talk on the phone, we text, although I text William more than he texts me at this point. And so I would say, there are logistics involved, but in terms of, the emotional part of sending a child away and what you're doing for your child, I'm 100% sure that we did the right thing for our only son.
Thanks, Amy. Yeah, and maybe let's just I was going to say, let's spin that into a bigger conversation about transition. What did, every kid sort of comes to boarding school and has a little bit of a different experience in the first 6 weeks. What did you all notice with your kids, and how might you reassure the young man on the West Coast, or the kid down the street here, in terms of their transition?
I was going to tell this story, and I don't mean to jump in and hug this wonderful panel, but I do have a story about that. So when we dropped William off, it was emotional, and he was a little teary, and I'm a big crier. I was, sobbing in the car leaving, and those first couple of weeks, you're nervous, and he calls, and there's a little bit of tentative in his voice. And one of the happiest moments in my life was one of his friends come the spring texted me, a friend, a ninth grader, of a picture of William below. He wanted to ask a girl he liked to the dance, and he was playing a guitar, serenading the girl with all a group of friends around him, playing the guitar and singing to this, and the group of his friends were hanging out the window, and just the joy in his face. And I just think of the little boy that I dropped off in September, teary and unsure, and where that came from, the ability to play a guitar and to be surrounded by a group of people in 9 months. I mean, it was extraordinary. It made me, I still makes me happy.
Yeah, I think there's, my kids were not as far away. We were about an hour away. And when I think about, if we were living in New York when Camille was admitted in 2013, and we moved to Pennsylvania. And one of the draws of St. Andrews over the other boarding school she'd been admitted to was that it was going to be an hour away. And that did turn out to be just fantastic. I could pick Crawford up from his grade school and drive, Matt remembers this, and drive, for an hour and be at the basketball game, and on the way back, we would get his favorite fast food, and he still had time to do homework and go to bed. And that was amazing. I mean, Tuesday, Thursday, anytime. Now that we're in New York, it's 3 hours each way, and I'm not there as often. And so that's harder. It's definitely harder. It's a day's commitment. And I do remember my daughter calling maybe in the second week of school. She had appendicitis maybe a week before she got to St. Andrews. So she really was not in great physical shape. She couldn't do the orientation trip she went, but she couldn't really participate, that they did after they arrived at St. Andrews. And it was some kind of outdoor adventure and physical, and she couldn't really do it. And she's a really strong athlete. And so that was tough. So she couldn't engage in that way. And she called maybe the second week from her advisor's landline, which just feels like, was that the last century? Like, I think it's hilarious. And she called from the landline in her office, and there was just like the silence, and she didn't say much. And then there were some tears. And I said, you know what, Camille, honestly, these first couple of weeks, the grace of this, the blessing, is that you either won't remember it at all because it was so challenging and it'll be a blur, or you'll remember these weeks as the weeks that you made the best friends of your life. And that's true. When she's at a job interview today and tomorrow in Charlotte, actually down there where Amy is. And Last night, she stayed with a friend in Santa Monica who lives in Santa Monica now, who was in her class, who's working. Camille has taken an extra year and a COVID year in college. And her friend Jasmine Sutherland is working in Santa Monica, and she spent the night with her before going to the airport at LAX because it was closer than her college, where she's in college. And she's having dinner tonight with another friend from that class, Kaya. So I just know that her friends, and it's true for my son as well, their friends and their parents have become our friends. Those children, as they've aged into adulthood, have been people I've recommended for jobs and mentored and had conversations about college with. And it's really been so much of an extension of our family. And I just can't stress that enough. And you will get out of it what you put into it as a parent, whether you're far away or whether you're close by. And that has been just a true gift to our entire family.
Stacy, I'll contrast the, we're about, if you're a normal driver, it's about a 10-hour drive from Charlotte, North Carolina to Middletown, Delaware. So people say you can do it in 9 hours, but I haven't logged that often. So for us, depending upon what we're doing, if we're dropping off or going to Parents Weekend, it's either driving or flying. We cannot get there very quickly, very easily. So I would put us in the, a little bit longer of a drive, a commitment. A couple things. First of all, St. Andrews does a phenomenal job of live streaming chapel, live streaming sports, live streaming concerts. So we will watch our children on the big TV and, feel like we were almost there. We will, surprise them every now and then at a game or a performance or something unexpected. I would say the two things to keep in mind is there is never a time in the academic year, never a time that you go more than 5 weeks without seeing your child. So the longest stretch is really after New Year's. That's probably until, and that's not even 5 weeks. So from New Year's till winter long weekend, but we looked at it and we're like, they go to camp in the summer for 4 weeks. So we knew that it was never going to be much longer. Most of the time it's 4 weeks before either you're going there or they're coming home. There's a break, there's a long weekend, there's a parents' weekend. So when you look at it, you'd really just have to think about them being gone in kind of 3 to 5 week increments. And they think about it that way. And when they come home, they feel like they just left. I mean, they're like, nothing has changed. You still have the same box of cereal like that no one has finished. So it's really not, if you don't think of it as an academic year, think of it in 3 to 4 week increments for anyone who might have cold feet or is worried. And then the trade-off and the blessing that Stacy has used, and Amy said, joy, our children have done things that they would never experience, going to a school at home, going to a large public high school, which we have a phenomenal public high school, but it's so large, they can't accommodate kids to simultaneously be on the Model United Nations team and play basketball and also do mock trial. I mean, you have to try out for all those things. They only have a few slots at each high school. St. Andrews, the beauty, I mean, there's so many beautiful things, but the beauty of a 300, 400 person student body is everyone is required to engage. Everyone is required to have multiple activities, service activities, athletic activities, artistic activities, and you have to have more than one. That's what makes the school tick. And so that forces them to be so much more well-rounded, so much more engaged, because the school requires that everyone be involved all the time. So our children have done things that they would never get to do in high school otherwise. Service, sports, athletics, community, whether it's student council or honor council or Model UN, mock trial, symposia. I mean, our children have gotten to go to national sports competitions in Philadelphia and national symposia in Washington, DC. So the opportunities for us, it was like, we cannot rob them of all of this myriad of experiences that now we're starting to really see as they're in 11th grade and just graduated. We're starting to see how they can navigate the world. And they have a construct that is from a point of that is good, that is, strives for the beautiful, the pure, the inspiring, that a construct that helps them navigate the world and navigate New York and Baltimore and DC and lots of places. So those are a lot of different thoughts, but all things that make this incredibly beautiful mosaic and beautiful experience that we've had.
That's actually a great segue, Amy. Thank you to one of the questions in the Q&A is asking about that. How do they get involved? And they use the language, how are they encouraged to get involved? But you pointed out in a lot of cases, it's required to get involved. So, maybe for the panel, for everybody, has there been something that your child has started at St. Andrews as a result of the availability or the requirement to do something that they've really flourished in? And I would say, especially focused on how they were supported in stepping outside their comfort zone.
I mean, I want to just say something about time. I think time, even though it's crunched and they're doing a lot of things, there is a lot of unstructured but supervised time where, I just think of this student who's not my child, but an incredible dancer at St. Andrews, a kid named Samir, who was from Philadelphia. And I remember having several conversations with mom over the course of his application process, maybe some tearful ones when he decided to go. And he's now graduated and is a student in college, and he had never danced before. And if you've ever seen pictures of a Black male dancer in any of St. Andrews publications, that's Samir. He had zero formal dance training. And after one of a third's, probably, I don't know, whatever, soccer practice or something he'd never done before, he had time and he wandered into a dance rehearsal and watched from the back. And I will never forget the moment on Parents' Weekend when he leapt across the stage for the first time. And I guess they call it a grand jeté or something, but it was like a mega jeté. Like, I have never seen someone fly like that. And through his 4 years, his formal dance training in a school that I don't think were known for dance, but my child was a dancer. Several of her friends danced. The Nutcracker is produced every year at an incredibly professional level. And this young man was the principal at his senior year. And that was life-changing. And that was because of time. That was because there is time to really take in all that St. Andrews has to offer. And I also think that our children have seen their friends participate in things, and they want to be a part of what their friends are doing. And their friends encourage them. My daughter played varsity basketball for 4 years. She's 5'1". She's the captain as a senior. She's a good little player, but she never thought I should go out for varsity my freshman year. But she met students in her first week who said, everybody's expecting you to go out for varsity, Camille. Like, this is going to happen. And had she not had those older students say to her, we see you this way, this is how we see you, maybe she wouldn't have seen herself that way. So I think it's the encouragement within the environment, the older students, the peers who bring students along and model that just unabashed engagement, joyful, unabashed, unashamed, unembarrassed engagement, which I just couldn't value more.
I'll add in terms of just activities. I mean, as I said before, we didn't think we'd have a child who would get super jazzed. We don't come from a family of attorneys, so we've never done mock trial. And We have someone who loves debate, and she got involved in mock trial, and apparently at the mock trial competition they were in at Villanova University, they got a little gavel. You win different levels, and they were one of the only two teams, or one of the first St. Andrews teams. They would, over the course of a weekend, they won 2 gavels, which is apparently a really impressive thing. So that was all new to us, as well as Model UN. They got to go to a National Model UN weekend in DC. And the one that's the most exciting for our family, and I think this is exciting for at least 50 families at St. Andrews, is most kids have never rowed before high school, because rowing is largely a team sport, and you need a very large body of calm, still water, and you need a really expensive boat. So it's very rare to have rowing experience before you get to high school, but because of a completely phenomenal set of coaches, both of our girls have turned into tremendous rowers on the team under Coach Lou Burrell and many other supporting coaches. And they've all gotten, the whole team, they've gotten to race in nationals, the largest high school regatta at Stokesbury up in Philly. They neither one of them rode before, but Lou Burrell will size you up and look how tall you are and what's your core strength, and stick you on an erg as fast as you can imagine. She's always looking for, people who will come out. And this year, I think they have Josie's in one of the, V boats, and I think they have 40 or 50 girls, 40 or 50 girls at a school with, not more than 350 students who are on the crew team. And so that's become such a large part of their lives. They've never done it before. They got to row together. One of our daughters is probably going to row in college. So that's an example, like the dance one, of it's just opening up opportunities that didn't exist previously.
I'll quick jump in just with a brief anecdote, an academic anecdote. So William, our son, came into St. Andrews for whatever reason. He was always interested in history, had a strange obsession with the history of Napoleon when he was in 6th grade. Who knows why. But St. Andrews had the wisdom to pair him as a 9th grader when he came in with his advisor, who he has been with for the last 4 years, a phenomenal woman named Emily Preston, who was chair of the history department. And just the thought that went into that pairing early on, it was just wonderful. But Emily encouraged William early on in his first year to run for the Honor Council, which I don't think William would ever have done without an adult saying, maybe you should do this, to get up in front of a group of his peers. So new at the school, but he did, and he was elected to the Honor Council, and that's something he's done for the last 4 years. And I think that, and it's really less about him being on the Honor Council, but more about an adult encouraging an academic advisor and encouraging him to take a chance that way, and helping him find his voice. That experience on the Honor Council has helped him find his voice. And then the small classes where you sit around a Harkness table and you have to speak your point of view. I've watched William find his voice academically. He one of the things that he did his junior year at St. Andrews, he was allowed to do a junior project his senior spring where you can research anything that you want and write a paper about it. And he did that with the help of Emily Pressman and another history in the teacher in the history department. And he wrote this it sounds like I'm bragging about, which I just couldn't believe it. It has not. It's really the mentoring of the faculty there. He wrote this paper about how England helped finance the Civil War through cotton bonds, and it was all original research that he did with the help of his advisor and the history department. And then talking about it around our dinner table, I can't believe that the voice and the intelligence that the school has given my son. So really impressive.
Yeah. and there's so many great examples of that, watching it from the faculty perspective as well. And so just it's funny because I'll do a little bit of history, and having talked with William at the lunch table about that history paper as he was writing it, that's the normal process. The original question was, how are kids encouraged to do things and take on new challenges and step outside their comfort zones? And it's really remarkable what they can achieve if they're prompted at the right time, and especially if they're encouraged in the right tone. So glad to hear those great stories. So
That's what teaching is.
yeah,
right? I mean,
exactly.
That's what great teaching is. So anyway.
There was a couple sort of very basic, like, can we come visit as parents? And so I just wanted to say, yes, absolutely. I remember, I know all the times when Chris Seeley pops into my office when he drops Crawford off for preseason, or when Amy or Joe are here for Arts Weekend and out cheering on at the Boathouse. And of course, when the Atkinsons are in, they always have a little confab. It feels like, Amy, you're at the same dining hall table talking with William on Parents Weekend. So all of those moments are welcome, the big weekends and the small and the visits. Do any of you have a special sort of, I think one of you mentioned sometimes we pop in and surprise, like, do you have a special campus visit moment that you want to share with the group? Oh, Amy, are you muted? Oh, yeah.
Well, I was handing it to other.
Yeah.
Oops, overly talkative.
Well, we've had, we've had so many special moments sitting in chapel, getting the joy and excitement of, when your child gets to do one of the readings or is singing in the choir, or my husband lucked out and, like, the one extra basketball game that he, not me, he could go to one particular year. He got to see the one time in competition when our daughter scored a 3-pointer, and it was like, glory days of high school basketball. But those are moments where, even being from a long ways away, you're going to get to experience those. And I'll share, what an observation that my mother actually had, what we might miss in frequency as boarding school families. We make up for in quality. So we might not be there for every missed or made shot, but we are there for, number one, as many times as they really want us around. Like, they don't want us around all the time, high schoolers, but we are there for meaningful moments. And when we're not, I cannot tell you how quickly, as other parents have shared, how quickly a faculty member, an advisor, they will text you, they will send you an email, they will say, hey, did you see that your son or daughter got a special comment? A special comment is like a shout out from a faculty member. And, they all are racing to try and tell you about your son or daughter's special comment. They will take video on their phones and send it to you. And, you get home from work and you're like, oh my gosh, I love seeing the finish line of the cross country meet and how exhausted they were or how triumphant they were. So the faculty it takes a village, and they are our partners in parenting. They're our partners in trying to raise incredible, men and women, young ladies and young men who will become the men and women who, lead this world.
Thank you. Yeah, I was joking with Marvin and Robin before we got on about how the news tends to come from those other sources sometimes more than they come from your kids. So Marie Dillard won this, we got a great, on stage shout out moment, which Marvin and Robin heard about through social media before they heard it from Marie. But so another sort of procedural question, a great one about roommates. How are they paired, which I'm happy to share some of the actual logistics, but maybe as parents, you can comment on roommate pairings and how that works, and what advice you might have for preparing for dorm life.
I think I'm the only person on this panel who's been a dorm head. I had dorms of upper school girls at another school that I worked at years ago. the 10th, 11th, and 12th grade girls in the dorm. And, you know, it's an art, not a science, roommate pairing. And the dorm parent can really be such an incredible source of a home away from home, of also our children getting a sense of home life with those dorm parents, whether they are single faculty who have a pet or whether they are families with multiple children. It is an extension of home, and I think that the incredible sacrifice and gift that St. Andrews dorm faculty make to our kids is just remarkable. I cannot say enough about how much I appreciate what they do for our children. I remember Crawford, my son, the question coming from Matt around his roommate pairing very early on, and there are a couple of opportunities in freshman dorms for boys to live with 3 other boys, so in a quad. And that sounds like a lot of boys, and it's a lot of boys. It's a really big room. And he said something to me that I thought was really interesting. I don't know, Matt, if you remember this, but my son is on the quieter side, not necessarily, you know, one who would run for anything. I don't think he's ever run for anything his whole time at St. Andrews, and he's still had a super experience. And he said, you know, sometimes kids who are quieter need to be in a room with more kids. You might think that a kid who's really quiet should just have one roommate, but just the one roommate puts so much pressure on that relationship between 2 people. And if they have more than one person to bounce off of, and they're a little bit quiet, maybe it's just not noticed as much. And I am an only child, so I didn't go to boarding school, and I'd observed dorms for years. I had literally never thought about that. I wanted to go back and just, you know, make a lot of different choices as a dorm head. But that was really meaningful for me to hear. And I think that the care that goes into roommate pairing is exceptional. Of course, there are times when it doesn't work optimally. My daughter's freshman year roommate and she were very different people. They made different choices in the way they kept their rooms and the sides of the rooms, but it called on both of them to communicate, to have, you know, some intervention, not real intervention or mediation, but just conversations with adults and with their advisors about, how do I cope with this situation? What do I say? You know, how do I stand up for myself? How do I advocate for something that, you know, I would just rather not, you know, have in my room, which in this case was literally being completely sloppy, and this other person's player. That was the problem. But, you know, a lot of our children don't share rooms anymore. And I think sharing a room, and especially if you're an only child, sharing a room and sharing space and really figuring out that interpersonal relationship it's all learning. It's all leads to growth. And the dorm parents, residential life people, advisors, form advisors are always thinking about students and their living arrangements, their dorm experience as part of their larger academic experience. And I think it's done with incredible care.
Any other advice, the great advice for coming into a new rooming situation? Any other dorm advice born of your wisdom and experience?
I mean, Stacy, it's more of an art and a science, so it's difficult for the faculty to really understand who should, but the faculty is there, the dorm parents are there. Marie, as an only child, she had some concern, but she was able to articulate that. They were able to work that through, and they were successful at, you know, making it through the year. So those things happen, and then this year she's in a triple. But it's a part of life. But what we've seen is she's been able to understand, work together, and look, we're roommates, and we don't all have to go the same way, but we're roommates.
Yeah.
And I'd be happy with that. And it worked. But again, as he mentions, it's because of the environment, because of the faculty, because of the parents and everyone that's around them that help them with that.
And there's a healthy balance of student self-regulation and adult intervention. So I would just say, to round it out, assignments are sort of made your freshman year. There is an incredible thoughtfulness in the girls' freshman dorm as well. And so when springtime starts coming around, there are like kind of informal, don't tell our kids, but there are like informal workshops where you think through, who do you live best with? And that might not be your best friend. And that might not, maintaining a healthy friendship may include not living together. So I was really, really relieved when the person who is our daughter's dearest friend, they realized on their own, our friendship will probably be stronger if we're not roommates. And as a, probably more on the controlling side parent, I didn't have to tell them that. They figured it out probably with a lot of non-parental adult intervention. And it has really broadened their friend set because it's so-and-so's roommate and so-and-so's roommate. And now they can, more and all four. And so there is plenty of intervention that doesn't feel like intervention that Matt knows probably behind the scenes how it all works. So there's a healthy balance between student-led, but also informed from a place that's going to be healthy for the student body, healthy for friend groups, healthy for inclusion, because we all, range between introvert and extrovert and different life experiences. So I would say it might be slightly anxiety producing, but they do it really well. They know, St. Andrews knows what they're doing, and there are no horror stories. Really, everything can be worked out.
Yeah, thank you for making that point, Amy. The best friend, not best roommate question is certainly something I say every year when we get to April and we're talking about the year to come. So I just wanted to echo and thank all of those comments, and particularly to say that in the dorms, it's a part of the program at St. Andrews. It's not just checking the box of getting roommate matches done or duty covered. It really is deeply thoughtful and intentional. And that's, I think, why the kids can do such great thinking and such comfortable living, and work through problems when they come up. So, and I just wanted to say, Stacy, to round it out, I told Chris this the other day when he was in my office, but Crawford has always been quieter. But I do duty on his dorm this year where he mentors these knucklehead 24 sophomore boys, and he is such an incredible leader up there. He spends more time talking with each of them, debriefing their day, and it's just one of those things that I know I'm really proud of, and I hope you know that and are really proud too. So maybe it comes from living in the squash court. I also lived in that room as a freshman. So folks, we're coming up on an hour. It's been a great session. We're happy to stick around and answer a couple more, but if you do need to drop off, feel free. We are going to post the entirety of this on the Front Lawn Found website. Maybe just as a concluding question, it was sort of a follow-up to Amy Pitt's comment about trying new things. The question is, well, what happens if they try this new thing and they don't develop into a really strong varsity level player? What happens if they're not a good swimmer? How do they learn to improve? How do they deal with those moments? Have you had a moment where any of you had a moment where your child was not great at something, or didn't find it to be an easy fit right off the bat?
Worse.
So soccer, but she left the middle school playing as a goalie, and then when she got to St. Andrews, she was playing different positions. And this year, we had an interesting saga because she was saying, "I don't know why Coach Carroll is putting me in front. I can't run." And we said, well, he do that because he sees something that he's expecting you to do. And then after that game, she was like, oh yeah, I scored today. So she went from being apprehensive about the role to saying, oh wow, the coach didn't, and I was able to step up to that. So that was, those are some of the challenges. And the coaches that we met, they all see the different levels of experience. They see the different skills that come to the school, but they have a way of pulling out the best of all and bringing to a situation where they won't let someone sit on the bench. They will put them in the game and say, I need you to do this. No, you do. I think there will be encouragement when, everyone misses a goal, everyone misses a basket every now and then. But even not just the coaches, but they come together as an overall team. And, all of a sudden, he's leading people to them. We're going to work out, right? And so we're saying, okay, where did that come from? Again, there is a significant across the school, both with the coaches on the athletics, just as well with all of the guidance that they get from working on their academics and making sure that they become the adults that we want them to be.
Absolutely. Thank you, Marvin. It was a little choppy there, but I hope everybody got most of that because it is, I think really Marvin's point is exactly what I feel as a coach. There is nothing so motivating to kids to improve, to push themselves in any scenario, coach, academic, whatever, than to know that they are needed, right? And in a school of 315 students, we need that kid who's not the best soccer player to develop over 4 years and be a leader. We need that student to step up, and it's really incredibly motivating, and we see it in your kids all the time. Yeah.
I just really, this is a compliment to Stacy's, to Crawford and to my son's soccer ability. My son started out on the JV soccer team at St. Andrews, and he's not that good a soccer player. He likes to play. Stacy's son Crawford is a gifted soccer player. But William has been able to move up from the varsity from the JV to the varsity, and has all 4 years been a part of the team. And the St. Andrews team went all the way to the state finals this year. And William did not play, but he was so excited just to be there with his friends and supporting the team. It was such an incredible experience just to be a part of that, sitting on the bench. And so that wouldn't I don't think that would have been encouraged at a different kind of school. I don't think William would have been brought along that way. I mean, he just would have been cut and he would have been told to do something else. But you should, if it's been taped, you should all watch Stacy's son Crawford, Gifted. Anyway, that's all. Not so much William.
Yeah. Terrific. Well, folks, thank
Amy,
you.
that was too kind. Thank you. I appreciate that. I do
That's
want to
not
say
kind.
this
That's
is
calling
actually
calling it like it is.
Yeah, but this is this is indicative of oh, someone just has a nice comment to you, Amy. Make sure you see that in the chat. Tucking students in at night. That's so sweet. I think that this is, you will hear, and we said this before, but you will hear more about your child from other adults, other parents, and their friends. The friends tell you when you show up to take them all out for ice cream or something, Crawford did such and such, or I think, whatever it is, they are the ones to tell you the things about each other, which is just, it is rare. I just can't say enough about what I think is there in the culture and among the adults and the children, year after year after year after year, that it does, that thread continues no matter who is there. And I'm now giving you a 9-year history from 2013 all the way through 2022. And I'm seeing the same with a child of a different gender in different dorm situations, playing different sports, different advisor, different coaches, different interests. One child took Spanish and Latin all the way through in Greek, and the other one's interested in chemistry and physics. So really different interests, and seeing these same threads be true, continue to extend is remarkable, and it's not to be missed.
And I would just add, last, I completely agree with everything Stacy just said, and the word remarkable keeps coming to mind, that St. Andrews is not perfect. There's no perfect school, but they are remarkably good at taking a cross section of kids from all sorts of places and spaces and nooks and crannies from around this globe, putting them together, as the former head of school said, in a wild and wonderful experiment, creating remarkable human beings. Because after our first child graduated and she was, off in the world, and we were back on campus doing something with the younger one, I saw two boys from the older one's graduating class, and I sat down with them and had the most wonderful conversation, because I just wanted to be around them and hear what they're doing. And, one was getting ready to head off to basic training and be in the military, and one had just, made his first few weeks in college. And the fact that I could sit down with 18-year-old boys, I have no brothers and no sons, and I'm not really relatable to 18-year-old boys. It's like, and the conversation ended because they were ready for it to be done with Mrs. Pitt. But I was like, you guys are so fascinating. And it's because the school does this wild and wonderful experiment that just works out to the benefit, like all of us in this community of St. Andreans and this parent community, we're all the beneficiaries. I mean, I like to think the world will be a better place because of St. Andrews and the years and years and years of hundreds of graduates, but we really are immediately beneficiaries of this wild and wonderful experiment.
Well, thank you, panelists. Just to wrap up, from the admissions, but mostly just from the joy of being a teacher at St. Andrews. Your children have been accepted to St. Andrews, those of you on the call, but it's also an invitation to you to join this community, to be a part of it, to have the moments that you've heard here described, both with your own children, but also with the rest of the community and the folks you'll meet along the way. So we do, as we've said in every meeting, we really hope that you'll join the community next year. We're ready to welcome you, to support your children, and to thank you, Amy, have you be a part of this wild and wonderful experiment. So to our panelists, Amy, Stacy, Marvin and Robin, thank you so much. We've really enjoyed it. It's a great blessing. To our audience, we will post this. And of course, for those of you who will be on campus on Tuesday, we can't wait. For those of you who have already been on campus, we hope you had more of your impressions confirmed tonight. And if you have any questions, as always, please contact us in the admissions office. So with that, we'll sign off. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you again. Take care.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, everybody. How do I get out?